Good morning. It's a pleasure to be here today, and really appreciate the opportunity. I also have a couple of announcements to make before we fully get into this. If you're completely bored in the next hour, we do have an incentive, which is that the trophy, we did bring the trophy. So on your way out, you'll be able to take pictures. Nice. But we'll have hopefully, in addition to that, we'll have a lot of fun this morning. There's a couple things we want to go over, especially last year was such an amazing year, and wanted to give you a little bit of a high level of sort of what we do and how we go about something when we're sort of on this, what we call sort of a magic carpet ride of a season. But let's take a look back on last year and last season before we get into it.
The payoff pitch. Swing and a miss, strike three. The Red Sox have their first win of 2018.
See you later.
Swing and a miss, strike three.
Oh, a marvelous pitch. Magnificent. Oh, my goodness. He crushed it.
This ball game is over.
The Red Sox walk it off in style.
The Red Sox have won the American League's Eastern Division Championship for the third straight year. Three-run homer into the first row of the monster seats. Pitches, and he takes strike three.
History for Brock Holt.
And the Red Sox have won the division series against the Yankees.
He got him. Jackie Bradley Jr. sends it out of here. And this one is gone. Rafael Devers.
And the Red Sox have won the American League pennant for the 14th time in their history. Gone! Three-run pinch homer, Eduardo Nunez.
It's all David Price.
Steve Pearce, another home run.
And the Red Sox become the first team in the 21st century with 4 world championships. Can you believe it?
And that was the 2018 marketing plan. Yeah. So, what for us, we wanted to start with this slide. It is it's still hard to believe. I mean, for us, that work for the Red Sox, and hopefully we have a lot of Red Sox fans here, it is a surreal experience for all of us to go through a season like we've had, and really a time period that we've had really since the ownership of John Henry and Tom Werner have come in, and it's been extraordinary. And John, Tom, and Sam Kennedy and their leadership has really been, for me, personally, just to be a part of an organization that has such strong leadership and is a consistent thread of all these 4 championships is truly extraordinary. But we always talk about it like each World Series has its own narrative. They're sort of like all of our kids. We love them all, but they were all very, very different. And so, in 2004, it was more like Miracle. We sort of think about like this was kind of like out of a Disney movie. Like there was no way that this was possible. And it's funny to think about those 4 World Series championships, because I remember vividly when I started as an intern in 2002. We started talking about sort of this apocalyptic moment of what if we actually won, would people still care? And it was, you forget, given the success that we've had, what it was like just 15, 16 years ago. So 04 was Miracle. 07 was a little bit more like Godfather 2, it was great. And we were so good, and we almost went wire to wire. It was a little bit dark, though. Like we sort of look back on 07, and people are like, yeah, 07. '07, and it's like, all right, but so that was a little bit like Godfather 2. 13 obviously had a very different narrative, which was about healing. It was about strength of a community. It was about how we all collectively came together and sort of typified by our players, and sort of to do something that was much bigger than baseball, and in our own way tried to contribute to a really dark time for us as a community, and sort of shed some light on that. And then this year, we were thinking about it, and it was sort of like the Avengers, because there were superheroes on this team that we didn't even know about, and they somehow all played their role as a team and as individuals to be sort of superheroes in a way that was, of all the seasons that I've been a part of in sports, it just all went right. And we're going to get into a little bit about that, but it's something that for all of us and all Red Sox fans, I think we definitely need to appreciate last season, because they don't come around often. It was arguably the most dominant team in our over 100-year history, and it was something special for us to be a part of. So what I wanted to do today is just kind of give a very high level of how we think about things when we are going on one of these seasons. And when we start thinking about, it's sort of around, it was funny, a couple of years ago, we always talked about what defines a start. It was actually in 2014, after we won the World Series championship in 2013, we got off to a very slow start in 2014, which also became a very slow end because we went in last place. But we talked about, what is a start? And this year we started 17-2, and we were like, all right, that's a pretty good start. And but what we wanted to do, and what happens when we're sort of in these positions of saying, all right, there's a real chance that we could go deep into October, and we have to think about, okay, there's the narrative of the season, and then how do we get ready for October and a postseason run? And one of the things we do is wait. And because when we talk about it all the time, I'm kind of the more neurotic one of the group, and saying, okay, let's go. We want to get everything planned and organized and packaged, and we got to figure out what we're going to be doing. And we've got a lot of other people say, let's just wait. And let's just see what happens, get past the All-Star break, get into late July, early August, to see if the momentum and sort of the narratives of the season continue to develop and continue to transform. So this year, obviously, we had consistent success the entire time. And one of the things, though, when we start to think about how we are going to encapsulate an October run, is we want to make sure that it's organic. And it has to come from the clubhouse. And so one of the things we did in 2013, if you recall, we had all of our players grew beards. And that's one of those things that if we as marketers went into the clubhouse in JetBlue Park in March and said, hey guys, we got this idea, okay? It works in hockey, and if you guys do really well this year, we think you should just stop shaving. It's like you would get fairly quickly dismissed, and you just, we'll see you in October. For us, what we do is want to make sure that anything that's going on in the clubhouse, it will resonate. Our job as marketers is to make sure that that's amplified with all the channels that we have. And so we really had a gift this year, which was Alex Cora. And he was a gift on a variety of levels that we'll get into in a little bit. But one of the things he said in his opening press conference was, this team can do a lot of damage. And we sort of noted that. J.D. Martinez started to talk about it a little bit sporadically throughout the season. And then we also had another gift, which is in July, we actually started talking do damage is something that we could kind of build. We thought we could build something around. We weren't exactly sure. But when the Yankees came to town in late July, Brian Cashman, their GM, in advance of their series, said that the Yankees, he felt the Yankees could really do damage against the Red Sox. And if you remember what that series became, it was a 4-game sweep. It was really sort of a turning point for us and sort of separating us from the Yankees, who also had an incredible year last year. And it really took. One is, we fanned the flames a little bit on it, and our fans started to see that and chirp a little bit. And then actually, at the end of that Sunday night game, we put out this tweet that just said, "Damage done." And at that point, it was like, okay, we've got it. And again, when things go right, they go right. Like if we said, hey, we would love for the GM of the Yankees to just say, they will do damage against us. We would love to have a 4-game sweep, and then that just sort of happened. And so that's where do damage came from. So it came from an organic place that started with Cora. It was amplified throughout the year, obviously typified in that July series, and then we started to run with it. And in the postseason, it was really cool because for the first time, MLB asked the clubs, said, do you have any local taglines, hashtags, whatever it may be for October? And we were like, yeah, here's one. And then all of a sudden, they put them on the sweatshirts. And when you get on field, all of a sudden that starts to amplify because, again, it's authentic, it's real, and it's what the players are wearing. So, and again, when it works, it works, and when you win, everything gets better. So the second piece that we want to do, again, the first part is about being organic and making sure that we've got a message that comes from the clubhouse. The second part, in terms of the focal point for us, is how do we bring fans along for the ride? And that's a really important piece for us. We try to do it throughout the season, but when we have these moments and we have this October, what we are trying to do is give people all the access that they wouldn't normally have. We want you as fans to experience what our players are feeling, the elation that the players are feeling, the feeling of getting onto those planes. And it is, again, we all know, because we're all watching the games and staying up really late, that it's exhausting, but it's also this sort of emotional roller coaster that we're all a part of. And it is our job to make sure that you feel like you've got a window in and an access into this as well. And so we did this. So we try to get beyond the clubhouse. We try to get into these post-game celebrations. There's nothing better than the post-game celebration. And we have constant discussions and meetings about how are we going to get in, what's the access going to look like. We want to give that's sort of our gift in many ways to all of our fans, and that's where social and digital channels have been so helpful. It was a huge differentiation between when we won in 2007 to when we won in 2013. Because if you think about what has gone on through technology and social and digital channels through that time, the world has changed. And the access and the opportunities for us to bring our fans along in that and engage them and have this halo effect of experience on digital channels completely changed. And then we've also been able to amplify those over the last 5 years. The last point I was going to talk about is just sort of our other team. And I think this is a really important point to underscore for us, which is everything that we did, I said, from literally from the discussion of doing damage to getting the access, working with our players, getting inside, having our players have the comfort with our team, does not come from a CMO. I may be up here speaking with a clicker, but it is not me by any means. It is the team that a lot of people do not see and do not know. On the left-hand side is our media relations team. They are in the trenches day after day and have probably the toughest jobs in the ballpark because they work for the players, they work for the organization, and they work for the media, which means that no one's ever happy. But they also, one of the transformations that I think we've taken as a club is to make sure that the media relations group is also integrated with the marketing and creative services group, which again, do not always mix. I mean, they're coming from very different places, and I think with other teams and other organizations that we've seen, there can be a little bit of a rub against those because they're coming from, media relations is about protection, and the marketing and the social media and the content team is about access, and so just inherently there can be some opposition there. What I think we have proudly been able to do is integrate that and be able to take baseball information and the respect aspect from the clubhouse and the media relations side, and then also understand how the access and how important it is to transport our players and the experiences that our players are having into millions of fans and on their devices. And so I'm really proud of the team that we have here, and part of the talent that we have on so many different levels. And that's from the video production side, it's from the graphic design side, I said media relations, baseball information. It's all integrated. We also have arguably the best photographer in sports, who we believe, who also has not only an eye for art, but also an eye for content, and has been such a fulcrum and a focal point for what we're doing as it relates to developing content. And one of the other cool narratives this year was not just about baseball, but about art and about photography and about this wind wall that Cora developed. And so I thought it would be befitting to have Billy Weiss here, who's our team photographer, who's going to sort of walk through his experience this season and be able to give you a different point of view from sort of the art and the photography side and not just the CMO side of the marketing. So it's my pleasure to introduce Billy Weiss.
The 2018 Red Sox season started with a picture. A family portrait, really. All of us, our team, one moment captured together before we started a journey.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, and welcome to Fenway
The
Park.
Red Sox are looking at this season as a chance to do some great things.
Winning is number one.
Every game's a must win.
Now on the verge of another victory.
Time to party! The Red Sox win!
We win, then a photo goes up on the wall. We walk off, photo on the wall. One-hit shutouts, go-ahead grand slams, run-saving diving catches. Frame them on the wall. No doubt, we've done some damage. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words,
The Red Sox win again.
but they look like W's to me. We're almost to the end of our journey together.
Kings of the American League East.
8 months and over 100 photos in the making. But we are not done. I need 11 more for that wall of mine.
Thanks, Adam, and good morning, everyone. So, kind of when you look at a successful season like this, any successful season on the field, it's easy to look back at these incredible moments and think that from a photo side, that these amazing photos are just going to kind of fall in your lap and kind of happen naturally. And while winning definitely helps, and that was certainly partially the case this year, there are also a couple other things that we did within our own marketing department that kind of we were able to kind of make photography more impactful and more meaningful. And I think how we try and differentiate ourselves from other ball clubs from a photo standpoint is that we're not out there just taking pictures just for the sake of taking pictures that are going to stand alone as like a singular image. Like we're trying to build them into, use photography as a tool to build into bigger content pieces or larger narratives or things that we can incorporate into other kind of threads that we're doing. To tell the story of the season. And when you look back at the story of this team in 2018, photography was definitely played a somewhat of a significant role in the story of this team. So the story kind of begins at spring training this year down in Florida. So every year I have to shoot this team meeting that happens, and it's kind of like the first day of school or the first day in class where you get everyone together in the room for the first time. And it's always a little stiff, it's a little awkward, people are kind of unsure, and it's always kind of done in this format where the players sit in the middle of the room, and then in the ring of the outer ring of the room kind of stand the people who work in the front office, Adam and I, and a bunch of other front office employees who are down there at spring training. And the manager of the team gets up there and he says some things, and then the meeting just kind of ends and everyone kind of leaves and you go about your day. But this year, Alex gets up there, Alex Cora, our new manager, and gives a nice opening presentation. And at the end, he says, all right, so the meeting's over, but what I want everyone to do is clear the chairs out. We're all going to get together and take a nice big family photo together. And he said, this is going to be the first of 5 photos we take throughout this year. 4 for the playoffs, when we clinch the playoffs, every round of the playoffs, and then we'll finally end with when we win the World Series. And so we're all scrambling to kind of clear the chairs, and in the middle of everyone's kind of scrambling to clear the room, Alex taps me on the shoulder. He's like, "You're good for this, right, Billy?" And I'm like, "Yeah, definitely ready, Alex. Definitely knew this was coming. Definitely prepared for this 200-person group photo at 7:30 in the morning." So I think Adam will tell you that was one of the few times I was unprepared to get the shot. But at this point, we know, okay, we've got something special here. Alex is kind of setting a tone that is inclusive and going to be conducive to us to get great access and be able to tell some great stories. So, we fast forward to the season. Alex gets to his office at Fenway Park in Boston, and he takes a seat down at his desk, and he looks up at the wall in front of him, and this is what he sees. So it's the black and white portraits of every manager to manage the Red Sox since the history of time, and his own face, you can see, is on the bottom right corner there. And he takes one look at the wall, and he's like, "No way." And he asks the clubhouse managers to take it all down. And he starts the season with just a blank wall in his office. And then during one of the first games of the season, I'm in the dugout taking some pictures. And he comes up to me and he's like, "Billy, can I talk to you?" And I'm like, "Sure, Alex, what's up?" He's like, "I need something from my walls in my office. I got nothing to look at." And I'm like, "All right, well, let me know when's a good time. I can sit down with you. We have thousands of pictures in our archive. You can pick out whichever ones you like, and we'll get them printed and framed for you." And he says, "No, that's not what I have in mind. Here's what I want you to do for me." I'm like, "All right, you put me on the spot again." He goes, "Can you print out one photo that shows the defining moment of every single game that we win this year? And I want to see how long we can keep it going." And so he starts the season with a blank wall in his office, and slowly but surely, day by day, game by game, win by win, this wall starts to fill up. And this is what it looks like as the season goes on. So, I'm just there shooting all these pictures and then printing them out and bringing them down to the clubhouse each day. And this kind of becomes known as the win wall or the wall of wins. And as the season goes on and we kind of realize that this is a special team and they have a chance to do something really special here, within marketing, we're kind of looking at this and realizing, this is a chance to kind of capitalize on, and we can ramp up coverage of this and use it kind of as a complementary piece for fans to follow along with, in addition to what's going on the field. So that's kind of what you saw in the video that just played, and it became kind of a narrative, a sub-narrative or a sub-thread throughout this season, in addition to just all the great action that was happening on the field. So this is probably going to go down as the best team in Red Sox history. I'm going to take partial credit for the photos that they're looking at in the office every day. So kind of an interesting use of photography as a way to celebrate a team or an organization's accomplishments. Something I never really thought about. It's kind of interesting. So these are the kind of pictures that I will take on a day-to-day basis when I'm out on the field. My job is to document what's happening on the field. So, getting those moments that you'll see as a fan when you go to the game at Fenway Park or when you watch on TV. Just kind of documenting what's happening. But in order to cover a team in a way that's exclusive and unique and give the fans kind of a unique look that only they can get from the team, your success as a photographer really hinges largely on your ability to make and maintain meaningful relationships with the players and the coaches. And this is something that takes a lot of time to build up. You kind of have to chip away from it to get that respect and level of trust from the players. But once you get to that place, you find that the doors really open up, and it allows for some really incredible access and really good, unique storytelling opportunities. Mookie's, barked orders at me plenty of times, but at this point, we're now at a point where we can kind of, he as one of the leaders of the team, kind of lets me into the clubhouse, and that leads to all kind of things that we can do. And I'll show you a couple of those. So this was a series of portraits of our all-stars from this year. We felt that we had kind of a star-studded cast of all-stars for this year, and we wanted to kind of highlight their profiles. And really, this was just me going up and asking the players, "Hey, can I have 5 minutes of your time? I want to do a nice portrait series of you guys that we can promote for the All-Star game, for voting for the fans so that they can vote you into the game." And we shot these before we left for DC in the All-Star game, and kind of sat on them and posted them, as the game was going on and the festivities of the All-Star week were happening. So kind of a unique look there. And this is another project we did. So this was from a series against the Yankees in New York when the team went on the road. So this team was really full of personality. There were so many different unique individual personalities on this team, and we're always trying to show what these players are like as humans as well as players on the field. You know, you all see the people, the players on the field, the pitchers, the catchers, the outfielders, the home runs, the strikeouts, but we try and show, in addition to that, you know, although they are high-profile athletes, in a lot of ways they're just like you and I, and they do have a human side to them. So this was kind of a fun piece. It was, I told the guys about it a few days before we were in New York, and they were all kind of into the idea. And it was just kind of you know, Adam talked about how we like to plan, and this was kind of the opposite of that. It was just wake up and see who would text me back, basically, and I'd get in a cab and go, and then somebody else would respond, hey, I'm going to the Apple Store, or hey, I'm going to Times Square. And I would just kind of go meet them and just get a little bit of a snapshot of what their day was like. So kind of a nice look at the lighter side of the players. I mentioned Mookie earlier. This is from his home in Tennessee just a few weeks ago, actually. He was named the most valuable player in the league this year, and this was, he invited me down to his home to kind of be there, and this was the moment that he found out he won, surrounded by family and friends and his newborn baby girl in his arms. And just kind of a unique look, and something that, you know, we can provide a window to the fans just based on kind of that access that we work to build up. So we're dealing with larger than life personalities, and photography is kind of a means to showcase, you know, these players in that light. And when I say larger than life, sometimes we literally mean larger than life. So this was a snapshot from our projections projects, which we did at the end of the regular season leading into the start of the playoffs. And this was a challenging project for us. There's a lot of trial and error, a lot of, you know, hours of planning and testing, but ultimately worth it, and ended with what we think were great results. So the concept was basically to pick 5 nights, 5 different neighborhoods within Boston, and showcase photos from this historic season and the 108 wins that the team put together. So, you know, we looked at this not really as an opportunity to create an event physically. Like, we weren't saying like, hey, come out to the Boston Common and look at this, you know, look at these projections. If people came, that was great, but we viewed this really more as an opportunity to produce content for ourselves, in the form of photos and videos and time lapses that we could, you know, promote and hype up the playoffs that were coming up. So we started this right at the end of the regular season, and we had a 5-night window of time between the last game of the regular season and the first game of the playoffs. And so this was a good way to kind of fill each night with something good and kind of promote the playoff hype. And this is kind of what it looked like.
Thanks, Billy. And I think our closing comment is that, you know, the art matters. and even in sports, and even a season that was so dominant. When you have a winning team, and the ability to cover that team and create emotional connections and augment those emotional connections through all means, and specifically through art as it relates to content, something that we were highly focused on this year. We're really proud of the work that we were able to do together in collaboration with the players, and also we'll be doing that and hopefully amplifying that in seasons to come. So thank you very much for listening to us, and we'll be happy to take questions for the next 20 minutes or so.
Take it one more time. Good points.
This is a question, though. It's on?
Yeah.
To Billy.
Yep.
You had mentioned Alex Cora with the wall of managers.
Yeah.
It's really amazing that, first of all, he cared that much about the photography and he thought it could make that much of an impact. But the wall itself, was that in his office or was that in a different part of the clubhouse?
Oh, the wall itself was in his office, which is kind of a sub room within the clubhouse.
Right.
So his desk is right here, and then right in the first row, here's the wall.
Yeah.
So he's looking right at it.
Just amazing that he had the vision to put. He probably said, "Well, how big are these images going to be? We might have a lot of them." So it was pretty good.
If baseball
Amazing.
doesn't work out, he's got marketing in his future for sure.
But the other thing that is interesting on that, there are two things. One, just the psychology of it. To think, you've got managers there that are like looking at the graveyard of their predecessors for a long time, and it's one of those things. And again, we all face this. It's like, why did it take so long? Why would you want to look at that? I know you're sort of part of this sort of brethren of managers, but the other piece is that the wall wasn't big enough. That was the other problem, is that it actually went on to a second wall.
Three walls, yeah. The second wall for the latter half of the season, and then the third wall for the playoffs.
And in the postseason, on the first base side, we actually recreated the wind wall in the concourse. And each game we'd put on in the postseason, we put on a different wall, a different window, or a different photo. So
just so the fans could kind of see it for themselves.
Yeah.
Version for it.
Hi. So I have a focus group of one at home with my husband being a baseball fan since he was a little kid. So a lot of things he's been talking about or complaining about the last few years is the overall viewership of baseball. The game's too long. There's no celebrities to hang on to and follow. So I guess my question is, how much do you feel like your job is supporting the team versus supporting the whole sport?
We think it's both. There are times, but I think it's rare. There are times that that we sort of run counter to MLB, but it's most of the time it's for us. It's what's best. We think what's best for the Red Sox and is hopefully best for MLB. There are probably other teams that don't feel that way all the time. But it is, I think there's a couple things on baseball and sort of this narrative around baseball and is it dying and all. One is that we completely reject that notion. The baseball is healthy, I think, and also the fact that there are a ton of games. There's no doubt that there's a ton of games. That has some implications where it's not always that you're not going to clear everything you have 81 times a year and focus for 9 innings on baseball. There's no doubt versus like what you would do in an NFL game on a Sunday. But just the fact that again, because of those games, that's also a huge benefit. I mean, we are being talked about. We are in your house almost every day. We've got the ability. We draw more fans than the other local teams combined. And again, yes, we have 81 games, but that's a lot of people that come through. And the same thing on the television side as well. And again, now that we're streaming, and again, you're in your pocket every game. Like that's an important piece to note. There's certainly, we had some late games in the postseason, some really late games in the postseason. That is something that especially on the East Coast, we struggle with. I've got a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old who are now diehard baseball fans, and even to have them have a glimpse, an inning or two, the postseason would be amazing. again, the nice part now is that you can have highlights at 7 a.m. when they come down, and you can see the game in 2 to 3 minutes. And but there are some things that we need. Pace of play is a really important element that needs that MLB and the Commissioner Manfred is looking at and making adjustments. Even there's an announcement this week that on Sunday night baseball with ESPN, it's now going to 7 o'clock. It's a big change. So there's always an element of tweaking, and I think you've seen it with other sports. I think baseball is now getting into that in terms of just the game between the lines, and then also the experience of a fan who's paying, and also the importance of the balance of the ticketed fan versus the audience, and knowing that the audience is always much larger, but you also have the experience of the fan. And we're engaged actively with baseball on all of that, and we are highly focused on kids. That's been one of a consistent initiative that we've had over the last 15 years, but I think with particular focus over the last 4 or 5. And it relates to ticket pricing and trying to get kids in. We've got student tickets at $9. We've got a Kid Nation program that's for free for kids 14 and under. You get a free ticket to Fenway Park, and it's been fun to sort of see that, because I think we are proud of the connection, the natural connection, the organic connection that we have with our community, but also know that we don't take it for granted at all. Like, nobody needs to come to a baseball game. I mean, they don't. But we are really proud that they do, and really fortunate. And so we've got to make sure that the experience is to the level that our fans expect, and then how their tastes have evolved.
Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry. So being a longtime Red Sox fan, it kind of always stood out to me that out of the 4 local sports, the Red Sox really seemed old-fashioned. And now with your Twitter, it just seems so much looser. How much leeway do you guys have to kind of be cutting edge and be, have a little more fun with it than I've kind of noticed the Red Sox in the past?
It's a high compliment, by the way, so thank you. Do you want to talk to that at all?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is it all kind of stems from the clubhouse and the cast of characters that you're able to work with. I mean, we've got guys with just great personalities, and that kind of just comes through naturally on its own, and that I think you see that on the end result on Twitter and on our channels. But we do try and keep it kind of I guess a more playful tone at times, and kind of a younger, kind of more energetic vibe on social. I don't know.
Yeah, so we get good leeway, and I think we talked about when we had the first slide about the 4 trophies. I mean, I give John and Tom and Sam a ton of credit, because people don't always know Sam, but because he's been here and grown up in Brookline, but John and Tom have been incredible leaders for us, and and part of that is to give leeway to people that may or may not deserve it all the time, in the sense of the team, especially on the content side, is incredibly young, and in some ways I think we have to be, because I'm the old man of the group, but that's in terms of relevance, in terms of being on the cutting edge of things. Like, you need to be ensconced in the day-to-day. We delivered 20 Hawaiian pizzas to Yankee Stadium yesterday as part of our Gift to Sox program, and so there are a lot of people like, what's like Hawaiian pizza has become like taboo, like among the internet, like it's like the worst pizza possible. So it's like, but like you explain that to somebody, and you're like, wait, what? And you're like, you know what? Like, don't worry, like just go. And that liberty allows us to be more creative. It allows us to flow and have be able to sort of I think act on our instinct. And also I would say we talk a lot and have a lot of debates on what boundaries we should have and what we can't have. We still are the Red Sox, and we wouldn't want to do anything, even in a progressive way, to denigrate the history and the tradition. And what our prism is how do we continue to evolve it to make sure that there is relevance and there is a looseness to it. But Billy's right. Ultimately, we're sort of typified by what the players are day to day. And that's sort of when we talk about marketing on the team. There's the institution of the Red Sox, which really doesn't change. That B and that jersey and the Fenway Park, that is an institution that we only are trying not to screw that up. But on the day-to-day side and the season-to-season side, the players, the changes in technology, and we've got to be on the cutting edge of that. And we can't be sort of a victim of tradition in that way.
How does your content and your strategy change as your team is having a bad year?
What do you mean? Maybe you could talk about just kind of the vibe in cold seasons.
It's hard. I mean, they say winning helps everything. It's to a certain extent somewhat true. When the team goes cold, their willingness to participate and buy in on what you're doing is significantly diminished. And it just, you kind of just ride out the bad times with the good ones and hope that they're in a winning position and in a good mood to kind of help you out with what you're trying to do. I've been there for the bad seasons, and it's just not as, you don't get these type of pieces like the go follow them around in New York or go to Mookie's out. Like, it just doesn't happen. So, winning affects the overall mood, and that translates directly to content, I think.
The only thing I'd add is just we have the asset of Fenway, and that gets amplified, and we focus much more on Fenway during time. I mean, we're not going to if we're in last place, there's no spin to the, everyone talks about the Red Sox spin. There's like, you're in last place and you suck, and but Fenway doesn't, and it doesn't have to, and it is one of the differentiating points of as an organization of what we have. And even in a tough year, a July night at Fenway is still pretty special, and we want to make sure that we're focused on that.
Hey guys, so Red Sox baseball is just like the be-all and end-all of my life. This last ride was like one of the thrills of my life. But I guess my question is, for someone like me who, I'm early in my career, I'd give an arm and a leg to like be a part of this. Do you have any kind of like advice or anything like that?
It's not worth giving up body parts. I would say that. I think everybody has their own story. I think the hard part about sports is that if you want to become a doctor, you go to med school. You want to become a lawyer, you go to law school. There's no sort of direct route into sports, although I think the visibility has become a lot greater. One piece of advice I'd give you is to spread your search wide, and not just, if you're a huge Red Sox fan, that's amazing, but it's one team, and there are so few teams in Boston, much less in baseball or in football, and you've got to sort of cast your lot pretty wide. And also, I'd say, just from a sports standpoint, one of the transformations that's going on, at least in my career, is just it's gotten so much bigger. In terms of, if you want to go and work, for agencies or broadcasters, or now you can go, work for Uninterrupted or Bleacher Report. There's just the proliferation of content, and the magnitude of that has just expanded tremendously. So I think team sports, there's pluses and minuses to it. It's much more of a lifestyle than it is a job. Although I think, more you read about all the content producers, that's the same way. You got to be all in, which is great. And that also, though, because you've got a community of those people, I think Rick can raise the game a little bit as well, and we sort of push each other. So, we'd be happy to talk more, but that's what I'd say.
So social media is obviously a really large part of your marketing initiative. Do you think the fact that Major League Baseball has really strict control over the distribution of their clips on social is potentially limiting the growth of your brand and the overall sport, especially among younger viewers?
Yeah, so they've, for those that don't know, every league has its own digital makeup and allows teams and and rights holders their own rules and regulations as it relates to clips and highlights. Baseball, for a while, about 15 years ago, or actually no, about 20 years ago, aggregated all of the digital rights together of the clubs and made them on and so that's where Major League Baseball Advanced Media came into play, and they were at the hard part from a team standpoint was at times the day-to-day was shared. We didn't own our own digital rights, and so you've got this sort of enterprise in New York that handles all of the back end and all of the and as digital has proliferated, MLB was sort of at the forefront of that, and in many ways to the industry's benefit because of the aggregation. They also were on the leading edge of technology and were really the preeminent streaming platform that started to not only stream all of the baseball games throughout MLB, but also was the real pipeline for HBO Go and WWE, and then they sold that off to Disney for $3 billion. So they've done really well, and they're now it's a different phase where they're starting to allow teams to do more and use the clips in a different way and use highlights in a different way and sort of in a marketing capacity. And there's this debate of monetization versus marketing. And the NBA I think has been on sort of one extreme where they've really been sort of a laissez-faire approach to sort of using highlights and trying to create a much larger sort of marketing ecosystem within the digital space. And I think the NFL has been sort of the most restrictive thus far, and MLB has been a little bit in the middle. So I think what we've got, NESN now is streaming all of our games, and so you've got that ability, which is great. The highlights are more abundant, and so we are able to do more as a club than we did the last several years, and that's something for us that we certainly embrace.
Only other thing I'd add to that is that we also do have separate from our department, but we have a great video productions department who kind of shoots the games and everything that's happening from a more kind of an artistic viewpoint. And the videos that you saw here were largely comprised of their footage. So we do have that also as a complementary piece to the highlights, from the league from a video standpoint.
Good morning. As you guys said, stars aligned this season on many levels. Not to underplay, though, the fact that you guys really put together an amazing program from the marketing perspective. So thank you for sharing that with us. If it wasn't a winning season, we touched on this a little bit before, and this is why I asked the question. The work that you did from an image standpoint, creativity, the marketing, the messaging, it wasn't just external. It really, you guys showed a great internal message, too. It really pulled the team together, which I think is something that should resonate in this room for any marketer going out to whatever their market is. They need to get that team on board. So that was really good, too. Are there any other, I'm interested to know, other examples you guys have when the years haven't been as good and you don't have the winnings? What are the programs that have really worked, or things that you guys have done that have brought the team together? And maybe it doesn't result in a W, but at least there's a noticeable difference, both internally or externally.
I'm trying to think of.
I mean, there are a couple, and again, I think some of it goes beyond sort of beyond the baseball side. We don't know what we're going to do season to season. There are some tentpole programs and elements that align the team. Like when we have Jimmy Fun Day at Fenway, and again, I remember in 2012, 2012 was a very tough season, but you still had all of our guys out there, with Jimmy Fun Kids. We're doing the telethon. I mean, those are areas where for us, they're really important because for all the platform that we have, the community components are so important. And our guys, I would say, and you're closer to it than I am in terms of the day-to-day basis. It's when we're not playing well, and again, it's like everyone's got a bad day when you're not doing what you want to do to the level that you want to do it. But kids and some of the community efforts are rallying components that are really important to our entire organization and players included. And so, there are stories even amongst tough seasons. We had tough seasons, and Brock Holt became a legend during the time, his early years. I was just, even like in 12, like Pedro Siriaco, and was like, listen, like it's something. And we can't make it up, but like underneath the surface, there are some really great components. I would say also in 2015, like in September, we were last place. Like September was rocking at Fenway because some of our younger guys, like this guy Mookie Betts, happened to be playing that. And you start thinking about that, and that's what we focus on and energize. And so I think the consistent programming that we have, whether it's around kids, whether it's around community, and again, even in some flashing lights or some stars within a tough season, that's what we'll focus on and do. I'm not sure. It is much tougher to kind of get everybody around. And by the way, the point, we were talking about this before, the last year we win advance repeat, or before last season, like it could have been really cool. Our players are dancing like after every win, but our Octobers were short, like the music stopped. So you don't know what that could have been. Like that could have been do damage this year, and that could have rallied everybody around. But the winning is still the gasoline that kind of pumps it all.
But you mentioned like the initiatives that we do, the themes, the marketing plans. The players do kind of respond to it. We were on the bus, I think it was to Houston, one of these playoff series, and it was like 6 a.m, and one of the coaches was fired up.
Oh, that was the Puerto Rico trip.
Oh, Puerto Rico, after we'd won the World Series.
Yeah.
About do damage, and he was lecturing us on do damage and how it had this impact in the clubhouse and how they used that in their pitchers meetings before the playoffs. As kind of a motivator, and how he went really deep into it about how the Astros marketing plan was not great for this year and everything. But
he was a little biased.
Yeah, he was a little biased. But they do see it, and the players do feed off this stuff, whether we intend for that to happen or not.
And I think part of what Billy has done so well, we talk about sort of culture, like internal culture from a team standpoint. These guys, especially now that they're younger and they've grown up in a social world, it's different than it was even 5 years ago. And what Billy's doing and what we try to do as an organization as a differentiating point is to be resources for them. Right. So going back to the rights and some of the issues around digital, what we will do is say, hey, like we did some stuff with Jackie this year. Our video productions team did some really great work with Jackie at spring training. Like it went on their, his social, and we would retweet it or repost it, but like we don't care. We just want to make great stuff, and this goes back to sort of amplifying the personalities of the players, and they want it. So we'll be there to give it to them.
Yep.
Okay, this is going to be our last question.
Hey, Adam, Billy, great presentation. Thanks for coming out today. So I'm glad you brought up Fenway. It has to be the most unique experience. You mentioned it as an asset. First, I want to say, really great job. It's nice to see how you take the media and you give us a view of how you use it inwardly, with the whole organization. You mentioned Sam and John and the Fenway Sports Group. How do you see that maybe changing, or can you give us some insights into how the Fenway Sports Group, the Red Sox, the assets that you have, or what's your vision for the near term, or maybe some forward-looking?
Yeah. So I think again, John and Tom and Larry Lucchino, when they first came in, the biggest decision that they made was to keep Fenway. And it's, again, when you sort of look at history, they were the only ownership group that was in the running to acquire the club in 2001 that wanted to stay and remain in Fenway Park. And now it feels like a no-brainer, which obviously it wasn't. And obviously the execution of the environment and the renovation of Fenway was extraordinary. And so I think the evolution, so there's an evolution kind of within the ballpark, and what you've seen across baseball and across sports is making the sports experience is much more communal. Larger group spaces, larger opportunities to come together and hang. It's not that you've got to be in a seat for 9 innings as much anymore, but you just need to have an experience that you can do and make as a group. So that's sort of, I think, in addition to sort of the technology without denigrating the brand and the feel of Fenway. You're not going to have these huge LED boards all over the place. We will have LED. It just has to be sort of within the confines of that sort of the Fenway Park feel and the experience. The other thing, as sort of a prism into, again, how progressive that John and Tom and Sam are, is just they look at Fenway as an entertainment venue, and they did from day one. It started with baseball, but then we had one concert, and then it was like, okay, well now we've had as many as I think 13 in one summer, and then we've had hockey and soccer and ski jumping, and sort of and then we've got events day in and day out. So we look at it as sort of, the prism is baseball, but there's obviously much more around it. Now the next step is some of the real estate holdings around the ballpark, and there's some news that was broken a couple weeks ago just about this event theater that we're trying to build with Live Nation in the Triangle lot, which is where our TV trucks are right now. Because again, what we're seeing is we want to have sort of an entertainment space, a communal space, but we also need flexibility of those spaces. So about a 5,000 indoor seat venue plays really well next to a 37 or 38,000 outdoor venue. So that's I think you'll be able to see that. And we've got some other parcels that we're starting to look to understand how kind of this ecosystem of the Fenway neighborhood developed. I mean, over the last 10 years, if you look at what's going on in Fenway, it's extraordinary about how that's transformed and who's living there and how many people are living there. And so we really feel like we're a vibrant part of that trickle effect. We talked earlier, we didn't touch on sort of the other assets that John and Tom have as it relates to Liverpool and looking at that. I mean, they're at the top of the table now in the English Premier League, which again, I mean, when you talk about the ability to build success and sustain success. Now you're seeing that at a really, truly global level is extraordinary as well. And so, we learn a lot from Liverpool, and that is it's too long to go into now, but what they've done there over the last, since 2011 is amazing. And so I think locally you'll see a lot of that. And then also, there's just the other piece from a trend standpoint that's interesting to see across all sports is just sort of how the gambling legislation will sort of as an entertainment and an engagement platform transform sports in this country. Whereas like in Liverpool and in England, gambling has been a part of the sort of the daily DNA for a long time. So I think that's something to think about for all of us, and we're trying to sort of work through. But but I think the biggest thing right now is this event theater sort of outside of adjacent, but outside of the ballpark that will be sort of what we call sort of Fenway 3.0.